His fingers traced the contract slowly, deliberately, but his eyes never left mine. The tension in his office was thick enough to cut, and we both knew this wasn't just about the divorce anymore. "Isabella," he whispered, his voice rough with restraint. "We shouldn't." But even as he said it, his hand found mine across his mahogany desk, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in a way that made my breath catch. The legal papers scattered as he pulled me closer, his other hand cupping my face with surprising tenderness. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, his lips barely an inch from mine. Instead, I leaned in, closing the distance between us, surrendering to what had been building between us for weeks. Before we dive deeper, if you're enjoying this tension, smash that like button and subscribe. I promise this gets even more intense, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The kiss was everything I hadn't expected. Soft at first, questioning, then deeper as I responded with equal hunger. Nathan's hands moved to my waist, lifting me effortlessly onto his desk, papers and files scattering to the floor around us. The cool leather of his chair pressed against my back as he stepped between my legs, his body radiating heat through the expensive fabric of his suit. "Isabella," he breathed against my neck, his voice strained with control he was rapidly losing. "This changes everything." His lips found that sensitive spot just below my ear, and I couldn't suppress the quiet sound that escaped me. My fingers worked at his tie, loosening it with trembling hands, desperate to feel more of him. The afternoon sun streaming through his floor-to-ceiling windows cast golden shadows across his face as he pulled back to look at me, his usual composed. Attorney facade had cracked completely, replaced by raw want that made my core tighten with anticipation. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his hands framing my face with surprising gentleness. Instead of answering with words, I pulled him, down to me, claiming his mouth with mine, pouring 3 months of built-up tension and longing into the kiss. He groaned low in his throat, his control finally snapping as his hands moved to explore the curves he'd been stealing glances at during every consultation. My blouse seemed to dissolve under his skilled fingers, each button revealing more skin, that he worshipped with reverent touches. The cool air of his office kissed my heated skin, but it was nothing compared to the fire his mouth created as it followed the path his hands had traced. Every nerve ending came alive under his attention, my body arching toward him instinctively. "You're incredible," he murmured against my collarbone, his voice thick with desire. His hands mapped every curve, every dip, learning my body with the same meticulous attention he brought to his cases. When his fingers found the sensitive skin of my inner thighs, I gasped, my grip tightening on his shoulders. The sound of his belt hitting the floor seemed impossibly loud in the quiet office, but I was beyond caring about propriety or consequences. All that mattered was the heat building between us, the way his eyes darkened as he took in the sight of me spread across his desk like an offering. He moved with deliberate slowness, savoring every moment, every reaction he drew from me. When he finally pressed into me, we both stilled, overwhelmed by the intensity of the connection. It wasn't just physical, there was something deeper, more profound in the way we fit together perfectly. The rhythm we found was unhurried at first, a slow dance of give and take that built steadily. His forehead pressed against mine, our breathing mingling as we moved together. The desk creaked softly beneath us, but the sound was lost in the quiet symphony of our joined bodies finding their perfect tempo. "Look at me," he commanded softly, and when I met his gaze, I saw something there that went beyond desire. There was tenderness, possessiveness, and something that looked dangerously like love. The realization sent a shockwave through me, adding another layer to the pleasure building low in my belly. His pace increased gradually, responding to the way my body beckoned him deeper. Every thrust sent waves of sensation radiating through me, building toward something that felt almost too intense to bear. My nails dug into his back through his shirt, anchoring myself to him as the world narrowed to just this moment, this connection. The tension coiled tighter and tighter until I was trembling on the edge of release. "Let go for me," he whispered against my ear, his voice strained with his own approaching climax. The warmth of his breath, combined with the perfect angle of his movement, finally pushed me over the edge. The wave that crashed over me was devastating in its intensity, stealing my breath and leaving me shaking in his arms. He followed moments later, his body tensing as he found his own release, my name falling from his lips like a prayer. We stayed connected for long moments afterward, neither willing to break the spell that had settled over us. His thumb traced lazy circles on my hip as we caught our breath, the reality of what we'd done slowly seeping back in. But instead of regret, I felt only satisfaction and a hunger for more. When he finally pulled back to look at me, his expression was unreadable. "Isabella," he began, his lawyer voice trying to resurface. I silenced him with a finger to his lips. "Don't," I whispered. "Don't analyze this, or tell me all the reasons why it was a mistake. Just don't." He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. "It wasn't a mistake," he said firmly, "but it does complicate things," as if to prove his point. His secretary's voice came through the intercom, announcing his next appointment in 15 minutes. Reality crashed back like cold water, and we scrambled to make ourselves presentable. But even as I smoothed my skirt and finger-combed my hair, I could feel his eyes on me, could see the promise in them that this was far from over. When I reached for the door handle, his hand covered mine. "Dinner tonight," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "My place. We need to talk about what this means." I turned to face him, taking in his slightly rumpled appearance, the way his hair still showed the path my fingers had taken through it. "What if I don't want to talk?" I asked, my voice deliberately provocative. His eyes darkened again, and for a moment I thought he might clear his desk again and take me right there. Instead, he stepped closer, backing me against the door. "Then we won't talk," he murmured against my lips, sealing the promise with a kiss that left me weak-kneed. The next few hours passed in a haze of anticipation. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was him, and when he finally sent his address with a simple 8 p.m., my pulse quickened with excitement and nervousness in equal measure. His apartment was nothing like I'd expected. Less corporate lawyer, more sophisticated man with actual depth. Warm lighting, comfortable furniture, books that looked actually read rather than decorative. He answered the door in jeans and a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms that I remembered gripping me earlier. "You came," he said, and I heard the relief in his voice. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I thought you might come to your senses," he admitted, stepping aside to let me in. The apartment smelled like him, that intoxicating blend of cologne and something uniquely masculine that had filled my senses in his office. And if I had? He closed the door behind me, leaning against it. Then I would have respected that decision and pretended this afternoon never happened. But I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. The honesty in his voice undid me. I crossed the space between us in 2 steps, rising on my toes to kiss him with all the pent-up desire that had been building since I left his office. He responded immediately, his arms coming around me, lifting me against him as if I weighed nothing. This time, there was no hesitation, no questioning what we were doing. His hands found the zipper of my dress, sliding it down with practiced ease, while my fingers worked at the buttons of his shirt. We moved together toward his bedroom, leaving a trail of clothing in our wake. The large windows of his bedroom overlooked the city lights, casting shifting patterns of shadow and light across his skin as he laid me down on his bed. The Egyptian. Cotton sheets felt cool against my heated skin, a stark contrast to the warmth of his body as he settled beside me. "I've been thinking about this all afternoon," he confessed, his hand tracing lazy patterns on my stomach. "About how you felt, how you tasted, how perfectly you fit against me." His words sent heat pooling low in my belly. "Show me," I whispered, and he didn't need to be asked twice. This time he took his time exploring every inch of my body, mapping it with his hands and mouth until I was trembling with need. When his lips found that sensitive bundle of nerves, I arched off the bed, my hands fisting in his hair as pleasure crashed over me in waves. Before I could fully recover, he was moving up my body, settling between my thighs with a reverence that made my heart skip. When he entered me this time, it was with a slowness that bordered on torture, both of us savoring every second of the connection. The rhythm we found was different from the afternoon, less desperate, more thorough. He moved like he had all the time in the world to worship my body, and I responded in kind, letting my hands and lips explore the planes and angles of his chest and shoulders. "You're incredible," I whispered against his throat, tasting the salt on his skin. "I never expected—" "What?" he asked, his rhythm never faltering. "This, you. How right it feels." He captured my lips in a kiss that was somehow both tender and consuming. "It does feel right," he agreed against my mouth. "Too right for something that should be wrong." The irony wasn't lost on either of us, that the man helping me end one relationship had become the beginning of something entirely new and unexpected. But in that moment, surrounded by his warmth and the steady rhythm of our joining, nothing else mattered. The tension built slowly this time, like a tide gradually rising rather than a sudden wave. I could feel every muscle in his body straining. With control, the way his breathing became more labored as he fought to maintain the measured pace that was driving us both toward the edge. "I want to watch you," he said, his voice rough with desire. "I want to see your face when you come apart for me." The intensity in his gaze was almost too much to bear, but I couldn't look away as the pleasure built to an almost unbearable peak. When release finally claimed me, it was with an intensity that left me gasping his name, my body arching beneath his as wave after wave of sensation crashed over me. He followed moments later, his own climax triggered by the sight and feel of mine. The sound he made, half groan, half growl, was the most erotic thing I'd ever heard, and it sent aftershocks rippling through my already sensitized body. We lay tangled together afterward, skin cooling in the night air, hearts gradually returning to normal rhythm. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my shoulder, while I listened to the steady beat of his heart beneath my cheek. "What happens now?" I asked eventually, voicing the question that had been lurking in the back of my mind. "Now we figure out how to navigate this," he said, his arm tightening around me. "Your divorce isn't final yet, and there are ethical considerations." I lifted my head to look at him. "Are you having second thoughts?" "About this? Never." His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing over my cheekbone. "But we'll have to be careful, discreet." The idea of secret meetings, stolen moments, clandestine phone calls should have felt sordid. Instead, it sent a thrill through me. "I can be discreet," I murmured, pressing a kiss to his chest. "Can you?" he asked, his voice taking on that teasing tone I was beginning to recognize. "Because you weren't very quiet earlier." Heat flooded my cheeks. "That's your fault." He hummed, his hand sliding down to rest on my hip. "I plan to make you much louder than that." Before I could respond, he was moving, rolling me beneath him again, his mouth finding mine in a kiss that promised the night was far from over. By the time dawn broke over the city skyline, we had mapped every inch of each other's bodies, learned exactly what made the other gasp and moan and whisper desperate pleas for more. The months that followed were a delicate dance of professional meetings and passionate encounters. We maintained perfect propriety in his office, discussing settlement terms and custody arrangements with the same attention to detail that had first attracted me to him. But underneath the legal jargon and formal handshakes was an undercurrent of electricity that left us both wound tight with anticipation. Our secret meetings became more frequent, more daring. A stolen afternoon at his apartment between court sessions. A weekend getaway to his cabin in the mountains where we could drop all pretense and simply be together. Each encounter was more intense than the last, as if the forbidden nature of our relationship only heightened every sensation. He was insatiable in his hunger for me, and I found myself matching his appetite with one I hadn't known I possessed. In the privacy of his bedroom, or mine, we explored every fantasy, every desire that had been building between us. He taught me things about my own body I'd never known, brought me to heights of pleasure I hadn't imagined possible, but it wasn't just physical. In the quiet moments after passion had been spent, we talked about everything, our dreams, our fears, our plans for the future. I found myself falling not just for the incredible lover he was, but for the man beneath the expensive suits and professional demeanor. The night my divorce was finally finalized, he took me to dinner at the most exclusive restaurant in the city. We sat across from each other like strangers, maintaining the facade even though every cell in my body was aware of his presence. When he walked me to my car afterward, his hand lingered on mine as he handed me the keys. "It's over," I said, meaning the divorce, the legal proceedings, the need for secrecy? "No," he said, his eyes intense in the parking garage lighting. "It's just beginning." He was right. Without the constraint of attorney-client privilege hanging over us, we were free to explore what had been building between us. The passion was still there, as intense as ever, but now it could exist alongside something deeper, something that looked dangerously like love. The first time he took me out publicly, to a gallery opening downtown, I felt like I was floating. His hand rested possessively on the small of my back as he introduced me to colleagues and friends, and I could see the speculation in their eyes. Nathan Cole, the city's most eligible bachelor attorney, finally off the market. But it was later, that night, in the privacy of his apartment, that he truly claimed me. With the legal barriers finally gone, there was a new intensity to our connection. A sense that we were no longer stealing moments, but building something real and lasting. "I love you," he whispered against my throat as he moved within me, and, hearing the words I'd been hoping for, sent me spiraling into a climax that left me shaking in his arms. "I love you too," I whispered back, and felt his body tense with his own release at the admission. Afterward, as we lay entwined in his silk sheets, he traced lazy patterns on my skin. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. I lifted my head to look at him. "What?" "Move in with me. I'm tired of stolen nights and careful scheduling. I want to wake up with you every morning, fall asleep with you every night." The vulnerability in his voice undid me. This successful, confident man was laying his heart bare, offering me everything. "Yes," I whispered, sealing the promise with a kiss that tasted like forever. 6 months later, I stood in the same office where it all began, but this time the papers scattered across Nathan's desk were different, wedding plans instead of divorce documents. He looked up as I entered, that same heat in his eyes that had started this whole incredible journey. "Mrs. Cole," he said, testing out the name that would be mine in just 2 weeks. "Not yet," I reminded him, moving around the desk to settle in his lap, my arms winding around his neck. Soon enough, he murmured against my lips, and then I'll never have to let you go. Looking back, I realized that walking into Nathan's office, that day seeking legal advice was the best decision I ever made. I thought I was ending one chapter of my life, but instead I found the man who would write all the future chapters with me. What would you do if your professional relationship suddenly turned personal? Would you risk everything for a connection that felt this right, or play it safe? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your perspectives on these intense situations. And if you enjoyed this story, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell because things are about to get even more passionate around here.